And one of those issues is my fear that this country is moving very rapidly into an oligarchic form of society. Now, I think most Americans may not even know what the word oligarchy means, but it is a word that we better start understanding, because that is exactly where we are moving toward. Now, what does that mean? What it means is you have a relatively small number of very wealthy people, billionaires, who increasingly control not only our economic life, but our political life as well. It means that on Wall Street, for example, you have the 6 largest financial institutions, just 6, that have assets of some $10 trillion, which is equivalent to 58% of the GDP of the United States of America. 6 financial institutions which issue something like 2/3 of our credit cards and 1/3 of the mortgages. 6 financial institutions. It means, and I talk about this in a whole chapter, that it turns out you got 6 major media conglomerates in this country, Time Warner and CBS and others, that determine about how 90%, that control about 90% of the media in America in determining what people see, hear, and read. When you turn on your TV and you think you got 100 channels out there, and you think maybe 100 different companies own them, they don't. They're owned by relatively few large conglomerates, which are themselves controlled by bigger entities. The function of media is not to educate the American people. The function of corporate media is to make as much money as it possibly can. And I think what we saw in this last campaign, and there are studies that write about this, is that over 90% of the discussion you saw on television was not about the issues that impact your lives. It was about political gossip or about Mr. Trump or Mrs. Clinton, not about the American people. It was about polling and campaign funds and how much money people raised, terrible things that people said about each other. We need a media, among other things, that starts talking about the real issues facing the American people, not just the candidates as president. But at the end of the day,
what's up, revolutionaries? DC with you here. I got to ear up here because it's going to get robust. Hang on. There we go. It's going to get robust, guys. Welcome to the Robust Opposition on Our Revolution TV. DC here. And we got a lot to talk about today, folks. That was Bernie Sanders on C-SPAN, Book TV. He, of course, has a new book out. And he's on a book tour. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, too. Bernie Sanders on a book tour, becoming part of the elite. Is he already part of the elite? I don't know. And I've been immortalized, guys. There it is. Where am I? There I am. Right inside the flap. Blamed forever. Inside Our Revolution. That was in Santa Monica. And I haven't read the book yet, but I plan to. I'm reading another book right now, Listen Liberal, which is a great one. And I want to talk about some of the stuff that Thomas Frank talks about in that book. And we're going to talk about a couple of things today. With a good friend of mine, a contributor to let me make sure I got him up here, ready to go. Contributor to Project Sanity, as well as lots of other things going on with Progressive Army and many things. Adair Schmidt up in Olympia, Washington. Welcome, Adair, to the Robust Opposition.
Thanks for having me on.
And we were getting into a lot of stuff right at the top of the our green room here when we were getting in. I want to make sure I got you on camera. Why am I not seeing you? Oh, you're over there. Well, anyway, let's just talk a little bit while I find another shot for us, Adair. A lot going on this week in the Democratic Party. Bernie, of course, came out with the Our Revolution broadcast. and he said a lot of the same things that he was saying before, but it's more with of course, now an anti-Trump bent to it. And I think a lot of what's going on is we're all on the same page now, is the way I'm looking at it. And what's your take on what's going on this week? I want to get into some of the stuff about Keith Ellison and the DNC. I want to get into Chuck Schumer and him as leader. Bernie made an interesting, I'll get the video later, but he made an interesting gesture over on while he was talking about his book, about him being in the leadership of the Democratic Party. So, I think he finds it interesting that he's there and not necessarily at the top. But I can understand why he's not at the top, and the Democrats, Schumer's next in line, as it were, to lead the Democrats. So let's get into Adair. What's your initial take on this week's news and what's going on with the election? And for God's sake, who is to blame for Hillary Clinton losing this election?
Well, I can start with the last one. That's the easiest one. Hillary Clinton's the only person you can blame for Hillary Clinton losing an election, folks. I'm sorry. You can try to blame third parties all you want. I would actually argue that third parties helped Hillary Clinton largely in quite a few key Republican states in this past election. If you really want to look at people that could have thrown the election, in Michigan alone, there were 90,000 people that voted their entire ballot except the presidential election. 90,000 people. That's well over the amount that she lost the state by. So I'm sorry, I don't want to hear you try to scapegoat third parties and say, "Oh, this is why we shouldn't vote for them." How about next time you fill out the whole ballot, you vote for president, or you be quiet about it? How about that? But as it pertains to Keith Ellison being the next DNC chair, I admit openly to being biased. I had the chance to meet Keith Ellison in Philadelphia. He's a very nice person. One of the few politicians I respect because he's not a politician all the time. He's just a genuine human being. He's the same kind of guy behind doors as he is out there campaigning. Absolutely wonderful person. I do think, though, he is the best of a bad situation, and that he is the best candidate we have for the bad situation that is this two-party system, that is the DNC, that is this gigantic mess of bureaucratic garbage. It's been an interesting week, but I think there will be some bright spots. I absolutely despise Chuck Schumer, to be quite honest with you. I think he's absolutely horrible.
Well, there's a really good article in the Intercept that basically lays out exactly why Chuck Schumer is absolutely the worst possible choice to be the leader of this Democratic Party. That apparently he's all on board, though. He's all on board with Bernie Sanders' Democratic Party, according to the Huffington Post. But I'm not so sure. I mean, you look at some of the list of highlights of his career, which has always been a purely political career, never held a real job in his life, has always been an elected official since the age of 23, and raises the most money than Hillary Clinton, and actually probably raises a lot more than Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton only raises money for herself. So, and her foundation. So, because they can't give it to political parties. But yeah, Schumer is the Wall Street epitome in the Democratic Party. And Jimmy Dore talks about it as like, well, what has he got that's Democratic? Okay, he's for gay marriage and he's for choice, but that's half the Republican Party, too. Yeah. So he's basically a Republican. Go ahead, talk about your feelings about Chuck Schumer.
Well, that's it exactly, is that Chuck Schumer epitomizes today's Democrat. The idea that to be a Democrat, to be someone that can, quote unquote, govern effectively, you have to be some kind of moderate. You have to appeal to both Republicans and Democrats, because adults are all about making compromise. I'm sorry, when's the last time you compromised with anybody as an adult? Like, as an adult, outside of probably your romantic or your life partner or whomever is significant to you in that way, most of us don't compromise. Most of us say, you're either going to give me what I want or I'm going to walk away. Or if we do compromise, we negotiate it to get the best terms for us. What happened to that with the Democrats? We don't see that anymore. The Democratic Party today is the Republican Party of the 80s. What is wrong with us to sit here and call ourselves liberals, yet kowtow to the Chuck Schumers of the world? we have Occupy Wall Street. We have this gigantic movement. We saw the movement with Bernie Sanders. You see poor people coming together and realizing that, hey, if we want to make change, we have to fight for candidates that will actually make change for us. But then immediately the Democrats say, okay, well, you know what? We saw that Bernie was filling up stadiums, professional stadiums, mind you, not even just little high school rink-a-dink things, but professional stadiums had a massive following with him to Philadelphia, people that weren't even delegates. His lack of a nomination caused almost everybody in that hall to collectively stand and leave, occupy the media tent, draw this vast crowd. Was the DNC was forced to take underhanded tactics to silence dissent in the crowd. You see this, then you don't care, and you run Hillary Clinton anyway. Then you lose the general election. You nearly lost Virginia, where Hillary Clinton's running mate is from. You lost North Carolina. You lost Pennsylvania.
And here's where I think they made they made many mistakes along the way, from rigging the dates of the primaries, which Bernie Sanders, of course, knew was happening, because that basically happens all the time. But that's what they did, getting the conservative primaries first. But he went after Iowa and New Hampshire, barely lost Iowa if he didn't. But he says in this talk about how he spoke to like 3/4 of the voters that voted for him in Iowa, and
right.
he did over 100 and some odd rallies. The rallies, they saw the rallies, they saw the people come. Trump saw the people come to the rallies, and then in Michigan, when they lost Michigan, and they thought they were going to win by 26 points, and all the polls said, oh, we're going to win Michigan, no problem, no problem. And Bernie wins in Michigan. And they didn't learn that for Donald Trump at all. They went completely with their original plan.
Right. And that's it. That's what they assume. They've assumed lesser of two evilisms has worked for so long that it's almost like a drug for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has been able to move further and further and further to the right because lesser of two evilisms has helped. But one of the things, and I don't know if you've seen this, Dave, the documentary, The 13th. It's an absolutely amazing documentary. It is on Netflix. I recommend everybody watch it. But at one point in that documentary, they have Newt Gingrich come on. Newt Gingrich, of all people, who's I believe he's recently come out in support of things like Black Lives Matter and saying, hey, that there's institutionalized racism and we need to take care of it. Newt freaking Gingrich, people. But he gets on there and says, we were defeating the Democrats left and right because we were tough on crime. Because we used that moniker, tough on crime, because we knew exactly what we were doing. He says they knew what they were doing. That's why they kept winning until Bill Clinton comes along and he flips all of those solidly Republican ideas, quote unquote, toughness on crime, mandatory minimum sentencing, war on drugs, welfare cuts, all of these things that have always been the conservative talking points. Suddenly, because you put Bill Clinton's face on there and he smoked a little bit of weed, it's okay. Those are the liberal ideas now, and we'll gladly take those on. And so that, to me,
you just described what happened in 2008.
Yeah, no, that's it too. But that's what
with Romney Care,
right? That's what it is. It's the start. We are becoming more conservative as a group, as a party, I should say. And I say
I think, as a party, the party's been pushing itself further and further to the right. That's why you've seen the exodus from the party, why it's only 26% of the population is Democrat,
right,
or 29%, whatever it is currently, and the exodus into the third parties, or independent, if not third parties. But yet they continue to do the exact same thing. They had the 3-day donor meeting. Here's the thing, they didn't say, wow, look at what Bernie Sanders did. Look at all the money he raised from individual donors, from veterans, from old, indigent people with $5 or $10, $27 average. Look at all the money he raised from them. Why can't we get, the middle class voter to give $2,700? not an average of $27. Imagine if everybody in the Democratic Party, imagine the average was $270, because it
Right.
went up, because you've got people actually donating on a grassroots level, the maximum that they can donate, or whatever it is. So, they didn't go that way, though. They didn't say, oh, let's use this great internet website, let's raise money that way. They immediately had their meeting with their donors and said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put Chuck in charge. We're going to give Bernie a leadership position, and we're going to continue on and doing the same thing we're doing. Saying, oh no, we're going to, but at least now we have an ugly face on the policies that are going on. I mean, the deportation of 3 million people, 2 to 3 million people immediately. Well, you think first of all, there's not enough ICE officers to go out
Right.
and round up 3 million people. That's the first thing they're going to tell him in their first meeting, whenever that is. So unless he immediately spends millions and billions of dollars to hire all these federal agents to go out and round up people, it's going to be the same program that Obama's doing. Basically, he'll add some more people down there. He'll put a few more people on, and then it'll be the same program that Obama's basically doing. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, if
most of
it's
his-
different, we got to be on top of it. But go ahead.
Most of his policies are unconstitutional, right? Just period. But the ones that are frightening to me are the ones that have legal precedent. And so his Muslim registry has legal precedent, and not, as his aide said I wouldn't be surprised if under a Trump presidency we see something akin to Muslim internment. But right after September 11th, you saw a list of 22 Muslim countries where the United States actively monitored everyone from coming into the United States from one of those countries. Every single person. And then to cover their tracks, they threw in North Korea on the list as well, to say, well, it's not just Muslim countries. Look, we put on North Korea, who doesn't send people out of the country ever. But we're going to throw them on this list so that way we can justify having essentially a Muslim registry, having essentially a way to track people that we are just going to automatically assume are probably terrorists. It's it's frightening just knowing the number of Muslim friends that I have. But it's frightening because when does it stop? Right? Like, if we let this happen, does it stop with Muslims? Does it extend to all people of color? Does it extend to the LGBTQIA plus community? Does it extend to people that are dissenters? You and I, Dave, would, I think, be considered enemies of the state just based on the amount of, basically, we're just going to call Trump and his administration on their crap. What happens to people like us? I mean, it's the snowball effect is what frightens me, less so than his over-the-top campaign promises.
Yeah, what happens if we block him on Twitter? Or
That's going to be a 5-year prison sentence.
or retweet, some picture of him, a meme or he blocks us. What happens if he blocks us on Twitter? Does that mean
Well,
like
then show up
they
and you're
come
getting
out and
deported.
get us? We're on the list.
Yep. You're getting deported. If Trump blocks you on Twitter, you're getting deported. Like, that's just how it's going to work.
That's how it's going to work. At least from Twitter. But listen, I gotta point out that in this Intercept article, and I highly recommend you go and read this article in the Intercept about called. Title is Chuck Schumer, the worst possible Democratic leader at the worst possible time. Is you talk about surveillance that Trump talks about. Schumer was all over that when the New York NYPD was doing it after 9/11. He supported what they were doing, and their tactics were questioned, pretty adamantly. And he was very supportive of what they were doing after 9/11. So it's and check another reason why he's not necessarily the best. All we need is another horrendous terrorist attack, and he passed the Patriot Act. He was on board that. He was on board the Iraq War. So was Keith. I think. Was Keith Ellison? I know Keith Ellison is on board for a no-fly zone in Syria. He's talked about that. I really question whether or not as far as Bernie goes in our revolution, I think Bernie is basically back to where he was. Bernie has always been an outsider in the Democratic Party because he's recognized the corruption inside the party, and that it fundamentally needs to change. And he chose to run outside, which is easier to do in Vermont than probably any other state. So I understand his choice, and I understand his fighting and working with the Democrats within the Senate itself. But I guess what I'm saying is, to a point, I understand. There's a lot of people angry that Bernie is pushing Ellison and he's behind Schumer, and he's basically abandoned the people that wanted him to be leader, which I agree. I think maybe he should have been leader and said, this is the way we're going to do it. Screw the donors. We're going to raise money online. Nina's going to run the DNC. Here we go. Let's give this a shot.
Right.
But that's not what's happening. And I don't know if that's because he's just a fatalist, that it's just, there's no way. And that's sort of where I'm leaning, is there's just no way to change this duopoly in the short term. Because Nick talks about this on the Takedown, and we had him on the show the other day when we were filling in. And he was saying that, it's going to take a decade. And that's what it took the Republicans. That's what it took the conservatives, was over 10, 20 years to take over politics at the local level, in state houses and school boards, and working their way up in governorships to where the Democratic Party is completely powerless, pretty much
Right.
everywhere except Hawaii. Hawaii is now 100% Democrat. So
Nice.
Go ahead. What are your thoughts on all that?
But that's it exactly. That's what I've been trying to talk to people about, is you have to have engagement from a local level, because the DNC is comprised of the local level Democratic chapters of all 50 states. Here's a quick way, I think, to start stopping corruption, at least at a local level, to start getting good people sent to the DNC. Stop paying Democratic Party chairs hundreds of thousands of dollars to run a damn party. How about that? Let's start there. Let's start not paying these people damn near $500,000 a year to run a local level party. Let's not pay the vice chairs several $100,000 a year to run a local level party. What the actual hell is wrong with us in thinking that this is acceptable? That's where a lot of your donation money goes, folks. It's not necessarily to the candidates unless you directly give to the candidate. But if you give to the Democratic Party of your state, sure, they have a slush fund to help out, but a lot of that funds their salary as well. But that's the thing, though, is Republicans got involved at the local level. Republicans showed up, and that's who got involved. That's who got the power. The power is made up of those who show up. I know several people that are running for state party chair here in Washington. I know that a lot of folks have started showing up, and we're seeing a palpable shift in the Democratic Party in Washington state, in the priorities, and the way things are planning to be done, and the way that people are being engaged. There's a real and palpable difference that Bernie Sanders caused. I mean, he won the state 75%, so I'm not surprised. But these people are now showing up after the fact. They're filling up rooms where young Democrats in rural counties used to have maybe 10 or 12 people. Now they're getting upwards of 70 people in a rural Washington county where Trump won every rural Washington county, and usually by a large margin. We're getting these people to show up and start affecting change. And I think that's what's got to be done, is we got to get people in those rooms, on state committees, on caucus chairs, get them into school boards, get them into state houses, and then into governorships. But we've got to come together and work to do that.
Well, you're pretty deeply involved in politics up there in Washington. You, of course, were a Bernie delegate. I think you were also an elector, which I think is pretty easy to do. I
am not an elector.
You're not an elector.
I know a few.
You know some electors, yes. Now, what do you think? Now, what do you think? We talked about this a little bit before. What do you think about this move to? Now, there's a petition out to have the electors become faithless and vote for Hillary Clinton. There were some Bernie electors, delegates that were thinking about doing that. It's now all of a sudden the shoe's on the other foot, and they're no longer pointing fingers. They're trying to get them to do it. And then there's the whole question of the Electoral College. It's on the table again, as it were, because we've lost again, as it were, the Democrats. I, for one, just to throw my take on this just briefly, is say it's not that the Electoral College in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, mob rule is an issue. And, when the election is decided by 3 cities, as opposed to even 3 states, that can be disconcerting to some people, especially in, say, Wyoming.
Right.
But so I see both sides of it, and there's a big push again to get rid of the electoral college. What is your take on the electoral college, and can we do it on a state level, which now there's a push to do, to find enough states for the 270 to agree? Go ahead. What's your thoughts?
So I actually am working with a group called, I believe it's the Hamilton Electors. It was started by a close friend of mine who was also a Bernie delegate and a Washington state elector, who is now who wants to get the Electoral College actually abolished. And the way they plan to do this is they are working in tandem with other electors in other states and folks around the country, just regular, everyday average people, saying, hey, you don't have to vote for Trump. You are not actually beholden to cast your vote for who won the popular vote in your state. There are a few states, I think there's 7 or 8 with laws on the book that do carry a civil penalty for being a faithless elector. Washington State, for example, it's $1,000 fine if you don't vote, the way the state popular vote went. But whatever, who cares? As it pertains to having it, I'm truthfully a fan of getting rid of it. I'm truthfully a fan of not having the Electoral College, just because at that point you end up cutting the power of people that live in, heavily populated states. Washington, for example, or where you're down at in California, your vote is much less powerful than someone in, say, North Dakota, right? One vote in North Dakota is worth something like 6,000 or 7,000. I'm probably well overestimating this, but it could actually be underestimating even. One of their votes is essentially worth several thousand Californians' votes. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. California has more electoral college votes because it's got a higher population, sure.
Right, and I
But
read
let's
somewhere
see
with
how many
something.
votes, how many people it takes to just get one of those votes.
Well, yeah, I saw somewhere we really should have more like 190 electoral votes based on our population, even in
Right.
and I don't know how that's figured, but I saw that number somewhere. But yeah, well, that's all good, well and good now that California is nice and progressive, you know,
Right.
and we are basically a confederation of states. We're a constitutional republic, and elections are a statewide, are a state thing, and the idea of a popular vote really isn't in the the electoral process that we use. It's sort of a
Right.
creation, right? So yeah, I get the idea that I guess it would be like the European Union. I mean, does everybody, just because everybody in Germany or France decide on something, should everybody else vote for it? Sort of, that's maybe a bad analogy. I don't know, but I don't know. I think it's going to take a constitutional amendment. Boxer wants to do a constitutional amendment. I think I think everything is going to end up being statewide, and I'm hoping Lauren joins us here to talk about the big fear. One of the big fears is, of course, the overturning of Roe v. Wade and
Right.
sending it back to the states. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that would be a horrendous thing and open up just a Pandora's box of nastiness. But you got to remember, in Texas, there's 2 abortion clinics now
Yes.
available. It's the same. I guess it's this sort of crosses over with the electoral issue. In states where there's no abortions available now, they have a lot of electoral power as well. So
Yeah.
there's sort of maybe a correlation with politicians. I don't know. I'm just an asshole with an opinion, and I don't know where I'm going with it. And plus, I'm a white guy, a white old man with a vasectomy in California, and have absolutely no reason to worry about it. So, even if it gets thrown back to the states, California, we're always going to have, abortion available, of
Right.
choice, and doctors and patients are going to be in charge, and we're gonna lead the way no matter what. So I guess what I'm saying is, it's already the states that want to do something about abortion are doing it. They're finding ways to do it, and they will always find ways to do it. That's
Absolutely.
Look at the 13th. The 13th is a perfect example. Well, we got to get rid of slavery, but we got a caveat,
Right.
and that's what we got.
And that's part of it exactly. Though I had read an article, and I can't remember the name of it, but I agree with the author in that the author says this about the big fear being Roe v. Wade being overturned, is that Trump would realistically need $4 to $5 different judges on the Supreme Court. He would need to name 4 to 5 incredibly conservative, anti-abortion activist judges to the Supreme Court to actually have a chance of getting that overturned. Because as you saw more recently, there was actually a challenge to, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was somebody versus like United Health or something like that. That actually made it to the Supreme Court. And what we saw is that the Roberts Court is really, he does not want to overturn precedent so easily. His idea is that if there's precedent, we will follow the precedent and we will only turn it over if and only if there is substantial reason to do so, right? If there's been a substantial change since that precedent was set, then I think he would overturn it. So I think Roe v. Wade is safe. What I do think would happen is that if another one does make it up, we'll see even more limitations to what states cannot do imposed based on the precedent from the last case. I think we'll see a tightening of abortion rights in America, which is quite frankly frightening as all hell. But things going to the states, I don't know. I think really, if states start getting a lot of power, if states start getting a whole lot of power, then I think you see that, that joke meme that's going about like whatever they call it, like Cascadia or something, Washington, California, and Oregon seceding and forming our own little group and having the world's 5th largest economy. I think things like that have to be taken into account. I think you have to...
Califorwahi, I call it. Califorwahi. It actually is pronounced Califorvahi.
I would be down.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, but I think going back to states' powers, states' rights, I think that's going to be terrible in a lot of cases. In a lot of places, I think that's going to be terrible. I think if we go to states' rights, I think you see everything that's not the left coast and not parts of Ohio, and then the Northeast. Everything else it's going to be a terrible place to live. It's going to be Kansas all over again. No access to abortions. Everything is illegal. Schools are failing. Roads are failing.
I would say that is possibly actually what's going on in quite a few places in the United States, not just in Kansas.
Well, Kansas is the most extreme case that I know of, but they're also the conservative Republican paradise is Kansas, right? Like that, everything you could have ever imagined as a Republican getting past all of your dreams. Move to Kansas and then tell me how you like it. That's spend a few years in Kansas and tell me how you enjoy your children not learning, schools closing, roads failing. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. And I think you're right, though. We are seeing a huge swing of conservatism in a bunch of states, Washington State included. Again, I know we talked about this in the green room, but there's a bill in Washington State's House of Representatives to make protesting any company, the government, the police, anything illegal. There is a bill to remove the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, or part of it, in the Washington State House of Representatives. And it's got a lot of support from the right.
Sure. Well, everything's fine and good until you start to affect their bottom line. I mean, look at Dapple, look at No Dapple, look at the over $100 million it's cost the company, and we're talking about it also in the agreement. Talk a little about what is going on in Washington. In the news today, we were talking about with the shutdown at the port. Explain a little bit about what's going on. But these protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline aren't just happening, in North Dakota. They're happening in Iowa with white landowners that are being affected, and all the way to the coast where the latte liberals and are being affected, and everybody else. So it's a nationwide protest that's going on. Tell us what's going on in Washington right now.
All right, so yeah, Washington, and at least here in the Port of Olympia, we're getting fracking debris, all kinds of, and quite a few things that we're actually shipping over to North Dakota. So there was a group of activists, not even so much activists, just protesters, regular everyday people, who camped on Port Commission land in the Port of Olympia to stop the train from moving. They camped out there. They had about 100 people, I want to say, all in tents and everything, making sure that the train could not pass. They blocked it. They successfully were doing their job. Well, in the middle of the night, police in full riot gear came and forcibly evicted everybody in the camp. Everybody there was forcibly removed. And Port Commissioner Dr. E.J. Zeta made a post on Facebook saying she did not authorize that there needs to be a clear understanding of jurisdiction over who gets to say police can come in here and do this. She runs the port. She runs the police of the port. She runs all of that stuff. She also, frankly, to my knowledge, runs what comes in and what goes out of the port, including the tar sands, including the equipment and other things and debris that are going to North Dakota. So I dislike that she's playing both sides of the fence, but it's quite frightening that nobody knows who sent those police in. Police just busted in onto Port Commission land without the permission of the port commissioner and forcibly evicted all of the protesters and made sure the trains were able to leave safely. They stopped, well, I shouldn't say safely because nobody was going to affect the trains, but they made sure the trains were able to leave. They got them out. They made sure everything went well. Nothing happened. But to do so, they had to violate the rights of an entire group of people and the authority, rather, of the Port Commission. And so it's authoritarian and it's frightening. It's, here on the left coast, we're really protesting hard against DAPL. There was huge movements in Olympia, a huge march. There was another one in Seattle. There was one in Federal Way, one even in Tacoma, where I'm from. All along the I-5 liberal section of Washington State, people are going really hard against the DAPL protest, against DAPL.
Well, I really feel that it is definitely ground zero, to use a terrible term, but it really is the front line of the fight for the future. And I think I guess I'll
fill some of the air, but I don't know, Dave, if you're there. I can't hear you. If you're not.
Sorry.
Sorry.
They can hear me, but you can't. Sorry, I unmuted myself in Hangouts. Never mind. I apologize. Now everybody can hear me. I'm just saying that that is really the front line in North Dakota, and of this entire fight for the future, and the historicity of all of these different peoples of nations coming together, First Nations, for the first time ever, to fight the black snake, as they're as they call it, and it's everything. It's water. It's the environment. I mean, Bill McKibben tweeted out the Arctic ice. I'll find the graphic, but the Arctic ice levels where it should be, where it has been, and where it is this year, and it's pretty stark. I'll find that graphic, but he's like, oh, something is very wrong here. And I'm like, really? You think so? Yeah, something is wrong here. And something is wrong here on so many levels, and they're trying to cover it up. This is all basically a way to, cop 22, cop out 22. I mean, it's going to be so tragic when Donald Trump gets rid of all of this stuff. It's 2 degrees. It's done. It's gonna happen. It's not. There's no way of stopping it unless we stop civilization right now and get off the oil immediately. We're done. And everybody's starting to agree on that. And I guess I don't know. My hope is maybe Donald Trump's going to get the real information and go, hey, you know what? There is a problem here. I don't think that's going to happen. But and here's the thing. Bernie is on his book tour, and he's not talking about Standing Rock. He was talking about it before. He's not talking about it. He's talked about the Pine Ridge Reservation and life expectancies, all good stuff. And, talking about the real fight and the real, that no one's talking about poverty and on all sides. But, he has been and sort of since the beginning, Darren, let's maybe get into this. We'll get into this a little bit, that he's always been mostly the nice side of the fight for the white working class. Bernie Sanders has sort of fit into that he's always been the leader of the progressive or liberal Democrat white working class. And Donald Trump all of a sudden is now the hero of the right, conservative, neo-Nazi working class. Because I will throw that word, alt-right, I think is a ridiculous term. They're neo-Nazis. And not everybody that voted for Donald Trump is a neo-Nazi. But you did vote for Donald Trump. And we're talking about this, and maybe let's get into this a little bit. Sean King talks about how do you talk to a Trump voter that says, I'm not racist, but I voted for Donald Trump because I'm hurting. And his basically, he says, well, then you don't care about anybody else. You just care about yourself. And I'd agree that to a certain extent. And just to add a little something before I turn it over to you, my wife's experience so far at work has been, she works with a lot of Trump supporters. And they have tended to be, since the election, actually more open and willing to talk about politics in a nice way and to say, hey, listen, really, I'm not this way. What, don't believe I believe this. And basically she's like, okay, well, you have to prove that to us. And, but she found it interesting that she's actually getting more civilized engagement from Trump supporters, from Hillary supporters that are continuing to go, you screwed us, you damn Bernie bros, which I just find interesting. But okay, so how do you talk to a Trump supporter? Now you've had an engagement like this. Talk about how you handled it and what your thoughts are on this.
So a childhood friend of mine, from actually when I lived in one of the really rural parts of Washington, she is from North Carolina and she's moved back there, messaged me on Facebook wanting to know if we could still be friends because she voted for Donald Trump. And as she said, she's not a racist. Things are bad down here and I still love you. You're black, you're black behind. And I'm like, whoa there. If you voted for Trump, you voted for a racist, demagogue, misogynist, and that is what you stand for by casting your vote for that. That should have been a deal breaker, period. Period. The moment he announced his campaign and called Mexicans drug dealers and rapists should have been a deal breaker for your support, period. It's done. The campaign should have been over. Nobody should have supported that, but you did. And if you voted for him, that's what you voted for. And I'm going to hold you personally accountable for having voted for that. And you don't get to just gloss over that. And here's why. Within days of Trump being elected, just a few miles south of where I live in Olympia, Washington, and Centralia, Washington, somebody tagged "Make America White Again" and drew a swastika on a building in a park there. Since this has happened, someone has tried to run over my friend on multiple occasions. Since this has happened, I've been honked at and had the word nigger thrown at me out of windows by people with Trump pinch signs and American flags and all this all the damn time. People are being attacked. A Muslim woman was set on fire. That is what you voted for, period. You don't get to separate his demagoguery from the economic plans that, guess what, are going to hurt you. They're not going to hurt the elite. He's going to roll back taxes for wealthy people. Guess what? Trickle down isn't a thing. It's not a thing. You didn't get trickle down when Bush was in the White House. You didn't get trickle down with Obama, though Obama actually did do quite a few tax cuts for the working class. I will give him that. But you didn't get trickle down.
Well, that's my question. Let me throw this in, Adair. That's my question. Is it just an excuse? Is the real reason they voted for Trump is because they're racist and they want an all-white nationalist America, and that's actually why they disengaged? And now the economic message would just gave them permission to vote for him?
In a very real sense, yes. And here's why. People, and I can feel the hatred coming over right now, but I'm going to explain to you exactly why it is that way. Because in America, in recent years, you've seen some, not even a lot, but you've seen a very small gain of traction by minority groups in the United States working towards equal rights. You saw the legalization of gay marriage. You still have conversion therapy in a lot of places, so we're still making strides there, trying to actually bring equality to the LGBTQIA plus community. You're seeing protests because Black people are no longer going to accept being gunned down in the streets by police officers. You're seeing Muslim people come out and say, hey, I have every right to live a happy, healthy, and whole life here as you do. And a lot of white America is freaking out right now because when you are used to privilege, equality can feel like oppression. And so a lot of these people are feeling, well, I'm being oppressed. And a lot of them have been led to believe through the system of institutionalized racism, through the fact that the only politicians that are talking to them are the ones telling them these things. And frankly, through the rise of the neo-Nazi movement called the quote unquote alt-right, you're just like Dave said, you're a bunch of neo-Nazis on the internet spreading unchecked hate messages, sending out fake news articles that say black people are murdering all of these white folks. You're seeing a decidedly turn towards racism by white America. That is the only demographic group Trump won, was white folks. Everybody else voted overwhelmingly against him, but not white men and not white women. That's who he won. And that to me says that over half of the country has said, I'm down with racism. I'm down with demagoguery. I'm really okay with all of this, but I'm going to pretend my issues are solely economic. Don't lie to us, and don't lie to yourself.
Well, another issue that, and I'm probably going to get, we're going to get some comments, I think, on this one, this show. But I agree with you. I agree with you completely. And have we really come as far as Bernie Sanders and progressives think we have, and as the Democrats think we have? We referenced the 13th. And how basically slavery shifted to the private prison system. You talk about segregation, probably at its highest it's ever been in the United States. You have this obvious division and separation of people going hard to the left and hard to the right, and it seems like the political parties in charge are trying to hold that middle together as hard as they can. They keep running to that middle, or somewhere where they think it's going to knit everything together. So I think one of the why did Donald Trump win? Why did Donald Trump win? Why did Hillary Clinton lose? One of the things that oh shit, lost my thought, but it was a good one. I'll come back to it. But I think this separation, this division. Oh, okay, the demagoguery. We've had this 40-long year neoliberal experiment where they decided, the Democrats decided that the only way we're going to get anything done and we're going to, is to do what the Republicans want us to do. So we made a deal with the devil and started down that road. And Clinton knew what was going to happen. That's why he closed the borders basically before, after NAFTA along with it. He needed to lock people up because they weren't going to have work. He fell right into it. He went right into it, but he played saxophone and felt their pain. So great, awesome. Then we get Bush in a what you could call a stolen election, which they're talking about voter purging. We're talking about cross-check now in what happened in this election. Talking about possibility that actually it was stolen, and it was stolen by the Republicans by this cross-check program. So there is, it's like. I forget who was quoted in saying it, but when somebody starts screaming fraud, that means they're basically committing fraud. So,
right.
It's like, I know you are, but what am I? But back to what we were talking about and the Trump voters and what do we do about this and this separation and this division? The next crash is coming. He's not going to create jobs for these people, and he's going to continue to blame others. So, somebody said in the comments, so what do we do? What do we plan for end of times? We're not going to save the climate. We're not going to save our democracy. We're not going to save the party. Bernie seems to think we're going to save the party with Keith Ellison and Chuck Schumer. But, I think it's going to be a decade-long struggle to get any real change. But are we going to survive that decade-long struggle? And how do we stay together? How do we stay together as progressives? How do we stay together as people who want real change? And we want, I want to show a couple of graphics that, I'm reading Thomas Frank, Listen Liberal. And this actual statistic came up also in a Jimmy Dore video, a Scottish economist. And you can't let me share my screen with you there at Dare so you can see what I'm showing. But basically it talks about a statistic, and he says really the only one you need to look at, and it's that in 2015 or 14, Wall Street bonuses for 167,000 people were $28.5 billion. And in that same time period, for all full-time minimum wage workers, which is just over 1 million people, which is I find low, interestingly enough, but only $14 billion. All full-time minimum wage workers, half of what 167,000 people made on Wall Street. And this is after the crash of 2008. This is after no reform under our hero and hope and changer, Obama. And, you know, he put all of Wall Street in his cabinet. He bailed him out. Bush crashed it. He went along with the bailout. Passed Romney Care through 2 years that he had, was able to do anything. Immediately dumped the public option without blinking. And then went to sleep, which was sort of what one of Bernie's arguments was, that he basically dropped the ball, or we did, and didn't have a robust opposition to keep his feet to the fire. Well, how long, when are we going to, now we got to keep their feet to the fire. Now we got to keep Trump's feet to the fire. I agree 100%. Believe me, I was in the streets in San Francisco before the Iraq War in a puppet with 250,000 people. And they weren't showing that on multiple screens on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. There were protests all over the world and all over the country in major cities to stop the war. And now, of course, all of the protests that are out there now, they're all over the media. We got to keep his feet to the fire. Well, we weren't keeping Obama's feet to the fire, which is why we're still in this position. And here's another graphic I want to share with you guys. This is from I think it's a Federal Reserve report. And this is the labor share of GDP. And if you look at this graph, you see that in 2000, the labor share of GDP started to drop and just crash. And this is all the workers that make money, their share of the gross domestic product, that earn a fucking living. This is where it dropped to in 2000, or in 2004, all the way down, and then it started to come back up. And here we have the election of Obama in 2008, and look what fucking happened. Here we had the crash, right? The bailout, and look, but this is real. It hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. The share of GDP is the same. This, 2014. There are multiple reasons Donald Trump got elected. And I initially thought, because there was a lot of hate crimes after Obama was elected too. And the Southern Poverty Law Center was reporting many too. And initially I thought, well, it's the same hate, different decade. But yeah, you're right. The media, the media creation of this Frankenstein from the get-go, just covering him with $2 billion worth of free media over last summer, ignoring Bernie Sanders, who was the only one talking about poverty, the only one when he was on. Two-thirds of the time people talking about poverty on morning news shows was done by Bernie Sanders. And you know how often he was on morning news shows? Not very often. So nobody was talking about poverty. And now you have, people keep, comparing it to the rise of Nazi Germany, but, it only took 12 years. And it's, yes, we have to keep their feet to the fire. But I guess my point is, we keep dropping the ball. We keep getting these people elected. They're going to save us. And, and we ignore them. And we ignore them and we let them, well, it's okay. He's going to do it. He's going to be great. Everything's fine. He's on our side. I'm sure the TPP is great. It'll be fine for us,
Right.
And then it's not. So, on the bright side, no TPP. On the downside, we have a fascist who's going to start rounding up people and putting them in internment camps, and I guess what is it they say? The first couple of years of fascism is great.
Right.
The trains are on time. Everything's just awesome. And then things start to get a little squirrely. And that's really, I think, my fear. Won't take much for things to get squirrely in this country. And I guess, everybody's going to point at us, Adair. They protest votes, the da-da-da-da. But they're not going to point at the real cause and talk about the real cause or change anything. So can we save that? Lauren's going to join us here. Oh, there's Lauren right now, actually. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
Great. How you doing, Dave?
Okay, hang on. Let me bring you up here. You've been busy. Can you go horizontal? Here you go. I don't want to give you a big head. There you are. Lauren Steiner, everybody. Lauren Steiner, lead organizer of Our Revolution LA, joining the conversation. And you're not in Olympia. I'll take that down. You're out in San Diego.
Yeah.
What are you doing down in San Diego, Lauren? Welcome to the Robust Opposition, by the way. This is a new show I'm going to try to do every Sunday morning, if I can get robust enough with my coffee. But I'm going to try to do it every Sunday and bring folks together like Adair Schmidt over at Project Sanity and Lauren Steiner, who is lead organizer for Our Revolution LA, big Bernie supporter, Bernie delegate, activist for many, many years in the environment with fractivism. And down in San Diego, Lauren, what are you doing down in San Diego?
Well, hi, Dave. Hi, Adair.
Hey.
I'm down in San Diego for the California Democratic Party Executive Board meeting, which was held yesterday. And I guess they're doing some closing sessions today. But it's a very interesting meeting. I've never participated in the California Democratic Party or any Democratic Party before until I ran as a delegate for Bernie Sanders to the convention in Philadelphia. So a lot of people, as you know, Bernie supporters ran to be delegates for him. And we had a very strong presence at the convention. And a lot of people decided that they wanted to stay involved with the party to sort of take it over. Now, this was not something that I particularly wanted to do myself because I'm an activist, as you mentioned, and I'm an issues activist. And I've worked on fracking, net neutrality, TPP, shutting down San Onofre, stopping the takeover of community power, community choice energy programs in California. And I find it much more effective for me to work on the outside rather than on the inside. However, there were a lot of Bernie delegates that kind of got intrigued by the process of, joining the party and taking it over. And yesterday was really our first opportunity to show that. So this executive board meeting was to do their business and also to have the meetings of their various caucuses, the Business and Professional Caucus, the Latino Caucus, the African American Caucus, the Young People's Caucus, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's like 17 caucuses. And most of us, I got there midday just in time for our Enough is Enough rally, which the Bernie Sanders Brigade organized and several of our delegates spoke at. And what we basically wanted to tell the press, and I think, Dave, if you go to my wall, you'll find that I posted yesterday an KNBC news story from San Diego that I was tagged in because there were a couple of press outlets there that did cover it. And what we were trying to tell them was that the Democratic Party, that we tried to warn them in Philadelphia. We told them that Bernie would beat Trump. We were chanting it all throughout the convention hall. Sanders beats Trump. Sanders beats Trump. My fellow co-delegate, Alexis Edelstein, was holding up a map along with Bobby Scheer, which showed the electoral map with Trump and Clinton. Only in the real electoral map, Clinton lost even more states. So, we tried to say that they weren't getting the mood of the country and that they should have listened to us, and they still can listen to us. And in my brief remarks, I pointed out two things. One, I pointed out that it seems like they still don't get it because they put as their minority leader Chuck Schumer, who has taken more money from Wall Street than any other senator. And if we're trying to get big money out of politics and not look like we're the party of the rich and special interests, he was a bad move. And by the way, I didn't say, but I will say right now, I thought it was tone deaf of Bernie to tweet out that he thought he was an excellent choice. There was no reason for Bernie to do that. He could have remained silent. And a lot of people on Facebook have been commenting that Bernie needs to stop trying to curry favor with his Democratic friends and, just 100% represent our interests, which I think he is doing. But the other thing that I said, I segued into the leadership here in California because the vice chair of the party, the leading candidate to be the next chair when they have the election in May, is a guy by the name of Eric Bauman. Eric Bauman is currently the chair of the Los Angeles Democratic Party, and he is infamous for taking $12,500 a month from Big Pharma in a consulting contract this year to speak against Proposition 61. And for people that don't know, Proposition 61 was a ballot initiative that was supported by the Nurses Union, which would have lowered the cost of prescription drugs on hundreds of life-saving medicines to match what the VA pays. And it would not have been all Californians. It would have been just Californians in government programs. So it would have affected about 12%, which is no small amount. But the California Democratic Party did not endorse it. And we have to wonder how much of that has to do with the money that Eric Bauman took from Big Pharma. And also it got voted down because Big Pharma is the biggest lobby in Washington, D.C. They spend more money than any industry, and they spend $127 million here in California against that initiative. So I just basically said that I thought he was not the right choice to lead the party going forward. And then we went into the Business and Professional Caucus meeting where he was supposed to be on the panel. And we met over lunch to come up with some pointed questions for him. And because I happen to know the chair of that caucus, he called on me. He says he likes Bernie people. He wants Bernie people to come into the party. The ostensible topic of the program, of the panel, was small businesses versus big corporations and the importance of small businesses to our economy. But it was also people power versus money power. So at the end, a few of us Bernie delegates managed to get into some of our zingers about Eric Bauman. And it was really quite great. We were very proud of ourselves. And then capping it off was Nina Turner, who spoke to the Progressive Caucus, and she was on fire last night. I don't know if you managed to catch any of the live streams of that, but she spoke for about 40 minutes, and she couldn't have been better. Talking about the election and how Democrats have misread it. She also talked about that slogan, "Love Trump's hate," and basically saying she doesn't think we should be saying that because there was a lot of hate coming out of the Democratic Party. There was a lot of hate directed at her, a lot of hate directed at Bernie people and in Philadelphia. And so she called the Democrats out on that. And she also said we have to stop talking about the white working class as a bunch of racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, xenophobic, deplorables. So that was a great point that she made. And then to cap it off, and I didn't stay for this whole thing, literally it started at 12:30 at one of our delegates' houses, talking about the ADEMs, which is 1/3 of the delegates to the California Democratic Party are elected in January, and the filing deadline is December. So we want to put together a lot of slates to try to take over at least the part of the party that is elected by the people. The other 2/3 are appointed elected officials. I learned a lot of things last night about how the party, state assemblymen can take representatives and move them around like chess pieces on a board. So if, there's a race in Northern California that they want to, stack the deck for, they can move delegates from San Diego, let's say, up to Northern California. And it's like the super delegate, but on, a statewide level. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. We know in a couple of other states, Bernie people have already taken over the party. I can't tell you those states right now because I'm not sure, but we'll see how successful we are in California. So that's my long report from the California Democratic Party Executive Board meeting.
Well, that's great. Yeah, no, thank you for that report, Lauren. Very comprehensive. I got to find out what direct here. Wait a minute. There we go. I'll turn my camera. There we go. You know, you got to keep you're staying on top of these. I'm glad to hear what Nina had to say. That's kind of what Bernie said at his book club. You know, his book promotion on C-SPAN. That the deplorable tag of some of these voters of the white working class, and we've been talking about that. Adair and I have been talking about that, and how Bernie really has sort of set himself up as the hero of the white working class on the left, but ultimately, in reaching out to these Trump supporters that are saying that no, we're not really racist, we're not misogynist, but we're just hurting. Adair and I sort of touched on the idea that maybe the hurting economically really was just a pass for them to vote for Donald Trump, and actually it's for racist reasons that they're actually voting for Donald Trump, and not necessarily for economic reasons, because basically of what's going on. I mean, the amount of hate crimes that are going on, the unleash on the media that's happening, and it's division even more so that's being fueled by the media and fueled by this Frankenstein that the media has created in Donald Trump. Now, is the Democratic Party, from what you've seen there, is the Democratic Party going to go this direction? Is Chuck Schumer says he's going to do make it Bernie's party, but is he really going to do that? Are we really going to see that, or are we flogging a dead horse?
Well, it's hard to tell. You know, one thing that I wish that I did yesterday is speak to non-Bernie people, but it was so great to see all these guys for the first time since Philadelphia, and, to be in their warm embrace, basically, because we bonded. I'm sure you felt it too, just with Bernie people all over the country, whether you've even ever met them or not. You just know that they're like, simpatico. And as I traveled around, I, stopped staying in Airbnbs, and I would just post on the local Bernie page, I'm coming to XYZ city. Does anyone want to house a fellow Berner? And so many people would respond. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just so gratifying to know that we're out there and we're trying. I noticed that there were a couple of Green Party people that went over to Jill Stein and were back yesterday in the Democratic Party. And I asked one of them, so you're here, what happened in the Green Party? And they basically said, well, we love the Green Party, we love Jill, but they really didn't do very well. And it was kind of shocking how poorly they did do. And we feel that, like, if we're going to have impact, we're going to do it in the Democratic Party. So,
well, I always wanted to be part of the 1%, Lauren. 1% that voted for Jill Stein.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to know what Chuck Schumer is going to do. I mean, I quite frankly was a little disappointed, not only to see him get that position, but also to see Bernie get that sheepdogging position. Kevin Zeese, he's a friend of mine. He was with Occupy Washington, D.C., popularresistance.org. I fought the TPP with him. He was a Green Party member. He was Ralph Nader's press secretary in 2004. He's really pretty radical. And, when Bernie entered the race as a Democrat, he kept calling him a sheepdog, that he was going to be sheep herding people into the Democratic Party only to get them to vote for Hillary. And I would always say to him, well, that may be true, but I'm going to be using Bernie's movement to get more people into the issue fights, fracking, TPP, et cetera, which I did do. But afterwards, at the end of it, I think he had a lot more respect for Bernie because he saw the movement that Bernie was able to create. And I think he would have wanted, like many of us, to see Bernie run with Jill, take that invitation up. I think he would have won. We discussed this yesterday. If you ran that clip of mine, I think I was talking to people like what would happen, or maybe it's off the clip, but what would happen if Bernie ran? And people said, well, he just didn't want to take that chance, because if he lost, he would screw it up, not only for his legacy, but the legacy of the Democrats and, progressives and everything. So he didn't want to, roll the dice with them. But, I feel like for him to take this position, which has kind of been created for him, chief outreach officer, for him to be doing outreach, bringing people into the Democratic Party before the Democratic Party proves that it has changed, just like you've said.
Right.
The consumer can put forth some policies. And that's something else that Nina Turner said. She's like platform. Everybody was talking about his great platform, and people were saying, I can't pay my student loans with the platform. I can't put food on my table with the platform. I mean, Bernie was so counting on being able to implement this platform. And now he's kind of flailing around. He's saying, well, we'll work with Trump if he's going to do the things that he says he's going to do to help the people. And we're going to fight him
Well,
on
he's
anything
always
that-
been, he's always been getting, he's always worked with the other side in trying to get things done. That's been his MO as a senator and as a rep. So that's not necessarily surprising. And he's looking for a good outcome. And there are certain things that Trump was able to capitalize on to get that Rust Belt vote, with regards to, blue collar issues like infrastructure and the small list of things that he used to get that vote. So I'm not necessarily surprised that Bernie is doing that. Now, I agree with you that they basically have created a position here of sheepdog and given it another name. And the proof is in the pudding, really. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see, but we don't really have a wait and see sort of, we're in another cycle already. Now the election cycles are 2 years, and of course it's going to be a midterm, but this is going to be a very important midterm. Everybody's counting on this midterm. Go ahead, Adair. Go ahead, jump in. Let's bring Adair in here. I'll bring up a 3-shot here, and we can talk about what Lauren had to say and what your thoughts are, Adair, and what that meeting really means down in San Diego and what they're talking about.
Well, remind.
Oh, and also, and also what's going on. You're a burner in Washington, and you want to take over the party. Really, that's where you're at, right, Adair?
Yes. Actually, I'm working with both. So I am working within the party, but I'm also trying to work with some of the local Greens. It's a really loose collective out here. But and hey, Lauren, it's nice seeing you again. I think it's funny that your guys' reorg is in May. Ours is actually in January. So all of our reorg fights are starting now. I'm actually going to run for state committeeman out of my new legislative district down here in Olympia. But I really do want to touch on real quick what we've talked about Bernie being this kind of sheepdog figure. I agree with that. I think that's an absolutely apt description, but I would say I think it can be effective in drawing in especially millennials. I think Bernie had such an impact on people in my age demographic from 18 to 24 that if we can bring more of people in my age bracket and the age brackets right above me into the Democratic Party, I think we have a much better shot of taking over a lot more of a lot more of the state parties. And I want to know what you think about this, Lauren, because this is what I said earlier about getting rid of corruption helping to in state parties. Here in Washington State, we pay our state party chair something like $300,000 a year. Let's not pay our state party chairs hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. One of my friends, Majid, who was on our election night coverage and also a Bernie delegate from Washington, said that the state party chair position should be a volunteer position. It should not be something you're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. It should be something you do because you're passionate about helping people. And so I think there's got to be that fundamental shift.
Okay, let me address that, because this is one of the questions that we were asking Eric Bauman. One of his excuses for taking the money from Big Pharma is that he has to make a living. That his vice chair position is a volunteer position. He has to make a living, but he also has another job as he works for the head of the assembly, Anthony Rendon, and that is a paid job. Now, here's the thing that was discussed yesterday. It will be a full-time job. I don't know what the salary is in California. I'm sure it's probably close to $300,000, if not more, because the cost of living is high here. But the fact of the matter is, the other thing that was pointed out by Karen Bernal, who is, she was former chair of the California Progressive Caucus. She was the one talking to us about the ADEMs. The ADEM elections are in January. It's just that in May, the current chair steps down. So that's why these elections in January are going to be really important for choosing the chair, because only the delegates can choose the chair. But
Yeah.
anyway, she was saying that right now the party, with him working for the head of the assembly, they're either going to listen to the legislature and the or they're going to listen to the people. War in the California Democratic Party, and we want a chairman that's going to be listening to the people. And so the woman that's running against him, her name is Kimberly Ellis. She worked for an organization called Emerge, and Emerge is a women's organization that exists to recruit and train women to hold elective office. And she's been with them for 8 years. She is running, and she had a statement. They had a little forum at the end after Nina Turner spoke. She basically said that her goal was to represent the people and not the special interests and the big corporations. But one thing that they did do is they voted, and Susie Shannon, my friend, who is the highest up progressive in the executive board, and she's also on the national DNC board, she put forth a resolution. Oh no, actually it wasn't her, it was R.L. Miller, another friend of mine who General Caucus. She put forward a resolution to say that the California Democratic Party would not accept any money from the fossil fuel companies. And that resolution passed. And that's very significant because there was an article recently in the Sacramento Bee and the LA Times showing that the Democratic Party in California has been used to launder money with oil. There was also a report, Consumer Watchdogs, Jamie Court, another new friend of mine, on how Jerry Brown has taken $9.8 million over the years from big oil and big utilities. And we know that Jerry Brown has refused to ban fracking. We know that he has put appointees on the AQMD, the Air Quality Management Board, and the California Coastal Commission that are friendly to industry, friendly to developers. And he tried to weaken CEQA, the environmental law that all projects have to go through.
But it's a family thing, Lauren. It's a family thing, you know.
Yeah, I know. Brown's sister was on the board of Sempra Energy or something. But the point of the matter is that we have a new governor election coming up. And I've been talking to John Chang, who is the current state treasurer, on Facebook. He's extremely responsive. He's extremely responsive to me on Facebook, which is awesome. And I've been sort of trying to feel him out for what kind of, what he would agree to in a platform. And I was talking to Russell Green, who's the board chair of People Demanding Action. He was also a Bernie delegate, along with Karen Bernal, who I mentioned to you. And, she was saying that Tom Steyer is also considering running. He's a billionaire who had made his money in his hedge fund, but then he quit his hedge fund to work full-time on climate change. He started Next Gen Climate, and he put in a lot of people for Hillary at the end, a lot of organizers for her across the country. But, I was saying that I think we need to get anybody who pledges to be, who wants to be governor, to pledge to at least three things. One, to say that they will ban fracking. Two, to say that they will support single-payer health care. And three, to say that they will support a state-owned bank. And Betty Yee also spoke to that Business and Professional Caucus. She's the state controller, who I also know. She's a great person. She gave a really long speech, over 30 minutes at the end, and she was talking about how we got to tone it down, that, there was a lot of disrespect, and I think she was implying that it was coming from the Bernie people, but we could make a case that it was both ways. We have to tone it down, we have to unify, and we have to be civil to each other, because otherwise we're never going to get anywhere. But, she was talking about how she visits all these counties, and she said, California is not as blue as a state as you want to think it is. If you go in the inland, part of the state, it's as red as any other part. And she visits these counties where people are down and out. And she's heartened to see, like, a lot of Latinos taking power in their local communities. And they're saying, no, we don't want a handout. We want equal opportunity. So I went out and talked to her afterwards, and I said, equal opportunity for what? To get a minimum wage job? The problem is it's no good jobs anymore. And maybe we should be considering things like a guaranteed minimum income, where everybody would just get from the government a certain amount of money that would bring them to the poverty line, and anything else they work for afterwards would bring them above. Because yeah, some factories are coming back, but guess what? They're coming back and they're going to be all operated by robots.
Well, that's right. There are no jobs. The factories are not coming back. The coal jobs are not coming back. You know, it's all this delusion, this illusion of these mythical jobs that are coming. You're right. We're going to have to go to a basic income. That's an idea. That's an idea for people getting out of prison too. You know, for nonviolent offenders. You know, what do they get? Like they get here's $75 and you're on your own. And we wonder why people come back in. You know, there's going to have to be something other than the same old story and the same old plan about, we have to create jobs. Unless they're going to replace the pipeline with a string of windmills along the whole route, which is not a bad idea actually. There's a lot of wind in the nations. So
actually,
go ahead.
Speaking of wind energy, and I have to apologize, folks, because I am one of those people that is causing less skilled, I guess, less trained jobs to go away, as I am physics and chemistry major. But my physics and calculus professor is actually an expert in wind energy. And we were having this conversation. There's enough wind energy just off the coast of the west of the United. There's enough energy in the wind energy in the U.S. to power the U.S. something like 400 times over the amount that we use. Something like 400 times over, and that's just wind energy. And if you were to expand that to offshore and use largely offshore wind, you'd have relatively few windmills necessary on land. I mean, there's a huge amount of just wind energy. There's a large chance for a lot of jobs to be caused by, switching to green energy, in particular wind, solar, things like that. Now, there are some challenges if you use land-based turbines, e.g. getting them to the place. They have to typically be taken all the way apart and put together there. They do use quite a bit of wood in the propeller blades. If I remember correctly, it's wood inside, interior, and then it's fiberglass on the outside of the propellers. However, there's a huge, huge, monumentous potential for wind energy, in particular offshore wind energy.
Well, that's what Tom Steyer is all about, Next Gen Climate. And we have in California a fellow by the name of Mark Jacobson, who's a professor up at Stanford. And his organization, you can Google it, is the Solutions Project. And he has come up with how the world could basically be complete 100% renewable energy by 2030 if there was the political will, which he doesn't see if there's the political will. So he's got another plan that shows how it could be done by 2050. But he's also done state plans, and he's got a state plan for California. And one good thing that Donald Trump did say is that he would support, clean energy if it provided jobs. So the question is, and this goes back to your earlier question, Dave, is, how do we work with or against the Trump administration? I mean, there's a lot of things that Obama ought to be doing right now. He ought to be appointing this Merrick Garland, although I don't like him and I don't think he's liberal. It's too late to put forth someone else because they need to be up there for 90 days. And Merrick Garland's already been out there for, a year? So he could appoint him, I've been reading articles, to the Supreme Court, which he should do. He also just took the Arctic and the Atlantic Ocean off of drilling, which he should have done already. Unfortunately, he didn't protect the Gulf, and he's approved all sorts of more leases for the Gulf of Mexico. I guess his administration has just deemed that a sacrifice zone because the EPA has also approved unlimited dumping of toxic fracking wastewater into the Gulf. And we know that BP oil spill did so much damage that they're going the wrong direction. They should be cleaning that up, not making it worse. But he ought to approve, and also California Senators Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer just put forth something. I don't know if it's a bill exactly, but they want to protect the Pacific Ocean, from California up through Oregon and Washington from offshore drilling as well. So there's a lot of things that I think that Obama can do, like in the next few months, maybe by executive order,
No,
to
okay,
try to counter
so
the worst.
that's the question now. Okay, let's ask this question. What is Obama going to do in these last 2 months? Is he going to do anything? He's not. Doesn't seem to be doing anything about Standing Rock.
He won't do anything there.
Go ahead, Adair. What do you think he's going to do?
He won't do anything with Standing Rock. That's period. He will not. As it pertains to Merrick Garland, my understanding of the Supreme Court is even if he's been nominated, but I don't know that he can necessarily put him and have him as an acting Supreme Court justice until the Senate says yeah. And if we're waiting on the Senate, if he has to do anything with Senate or House approval, it's not happening. What I would like to see,
It can be done.
Okay,
It can be done.
If it can be done, I'd like to see it. But what I ideally would see right now is a move towards green energy. Would be a move towards let's start looking at get a something set up to get offshore wind along the West Coast. Let's look into something to getting solar energy, solar farms down in Arizona, New Mexico, things like that. But frankly, I don't think we're going to see anything really. I don't think we're really going to see anything happen. He's at this point, it's more about his legacy than anything else. And right now, he's going to be remembered as a great American president, and he doesn't want to do anything to screw that up. Even though Trump's coming in, and he could pretty much do anything and still end up a better president.
Well, wait a minute. He's got to do something. He lost Obamacare is no longer his legacy. He's got Cuba. He's got Cuba and the Iran deal. That's what I've got on my list.
And that's more than enough. Let's be real. The average American doesn't even know who doesn't know who their U.S. senator is, much less what Obama has actually done and the impacts of it. And so I think at this point, he probably feels comfortable resting on his laurels and letting someone else pick up the good fight, because the case could be made by Obama. The argument could be made that Obamacare might not have been perfect, but it's a first step, and I gave you something to build on. I'm the first president to give any type of mandatory health care to the United States. I don't agree with it. I think it's hubris, but I think that's the argument that he and historians, as we proceed forward, will end up making. He's remembered fondly by millennials, and we're going to be the next wave of historians.
Well, let's be clear. He didn't mandate health care. He mandated health insurance.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Let me just interject because Josephine, where I'm staying, looked it up for me. She said he can do a recess appointment and they go on vacation for 10 days. So but it has to be before the new inauguration day. So if the Senate goes into a final recess before December 24th, or even simply takes 10 days off in November or December, Obama will have a golden opportunity to directly put him on the Supreme Court. And recess appointments last until the end of the next session of Congress, which means 2 years. So that's basically what he can do. As far as Obamacare, I think it's a disaster. I'm on Obamacare. My premiums are going up 31% January 1st. I'm paying for the silver plan, $650 a month. It's supposed to go up to $850 a month. I mean, in many states, that's what people pay for their rent. Not here in California, but I mean, that's totally unaffordable. And what Obamacare did is great. If you don't make any money, you can get a nice plan for $150. But for people in the middle income, what he did was he sacrificed costs for coverage. Yes, he did insure millions more Americans, and he was able to get people to stay on their parents' health plan until age 26 and not be denied for pre-existing conditions, which helps me because I'm a cancer survivor. But what I was told was that could have been done through healthcare reform. They didn't need to completely change the entire system. And we all know that this was Romney Care. And before it was Romney Care, it was Bob Dole's policy. And, and really what we need to have is single payer healthcare. Now, interestingly enough, in California in 2004, I actually worked on SB 1. Well, I can't remember. I think it was SB 1. It was a single payer healthcare bill put forth by Sheila Kuehl, who's now on our board of supervisors, but she was in the state Senate then. And, it was introduced and passed by the legislature twice, but vetoed by Schwarzenegger twice. So when Jerry Brown took over, and Sheila Kuehl left the legislature, the bill was by Mark Leno, and it was called SB 810. And yet they never introduced it. And when I asked my friends in the nurses union why they didn't introduce it, I was told it was because Jerry Brown was going to veto it. And they didn't want to have the embarrassment of having a Democrat's bill vetoed by a Democratic governor. And that would just show how in the pocket of special interest Jerry Brown was. So that's why I think we need to make, with our next governor, it be a pledge that this governor will, support single payer healthcare.
Well, it's unfortunate it failed in Colorado. And of course, 61 failed here with a large amount of money from the pharmaceutical industry, over $100 million to fight it, basically put in bribing veterans to come out against it. So, we've got a challenge for that. I think it's going to, now the one guy you're talking about, he's the one that was playing doing all the commercials during the election about the environment, right? The billionaire that's going to run for governor.
Tom.
Right. And then, of course, Gavin Newsom's probably going to run, he's going to be running the slush fund for Proposition 64 here in California. But just to touch upon Obamacare again and millennials, Adair, you're talking about how millennials are going to hold Obama high in high regard. And he does have, of course, high approval ratings, some of the highest ever. But just anecdotally speaking, my sister is a nurse in Colorado, and a lot of apparently millennials are finding that there's this donut hole, that the seniors experienced between deductibles and then of course premiums, and a lot of these kids where parents don't have health care anyway, they have to buy Obamacare to get health care, and they don't reach their deductibles, so they don't go. And it's I don't know. I think there is now. Was it set up so we get national health care? That's one of the theories, is that here you go, you got it, now fix it. Let's put the public option back in. Let's do Medicare for all. Was it the incremental step that everybody thought it was? Everybody that I talk to in California is affected by it, that deal with Obamacare. And that's exactly what we said, Lauren, when they were doing this, is exactly what was going to happen. The middle class was going to pay for it. Poor people were going to get health insurance subsidized by the government, and by middle class, by the premium healthcare plans. And that's exactly what's happening. Our premium healthcare plans that we work for are going up too. So go ahead, Adair.
And that is the thing. But so for me personally, as a poor kid, my mom has a pretty decent job with the University of Washington Medical Center. So she gets really good health care. I thankfully at 24, I'm able to stay on that health care, because otherwise I would not be able to go to the doctor. But one of the nice things in Washington, and this is where I think states have to start stepping up, at least until we can fix Obamacare. In Washington state, premiums are going up. Do not get me wrong. But there is a huge, huge, huge population of people well under the poverty line, lots of college students, one of the gigantic homeless population that could still qualify for this. Lots of working class folks, especially on the other side of the mountains, especially in the Seattle area, where if you're not working for Amazon, you're not making very much. Where we have what's called Apple Care, which there's something like that, which I know it sounds like a product from Apple, but it's not. It's free. It's $0 a month, no premiums that I'm aware of, no deductibles again that I'm aware of. If you meet the poverty line in Washington state. So if you're poor in Washington, the state government will subsidize your health care because you need to have it. And that's something I think that we need to start seeing other states step up and do until the federal government finally gets their act together and gives us back the public option. Because that's what I would get. But again, it's all rose-colored glasses with President Obama right now. I know that a large number of my family and myself, at least when he was first elected, I was like, yeah, I got someone who looks like me as the president. No matter what he does, I'm going to like him. That ended up not being the case for me, but that is the case for a lot of other people.
Well, to your point about the poor people, the whole point is that a lot of these southern states, and I don't even know, maybe some of the Rust Belt states too, are opting out of the exchanges. And so they're not pushing this low-cost healthcare because they got Republican legislatures and Republican governorships. And this was probably the worst part of the Obama legacy, is that he completely failed the Democratic Party, and this is something Nina Turner spoke about. He got elected, he had both houses of Congress, he did nothing with it. She was talking about him getting obstructed by Republicans, but a lot of the things that I don't like him for, he did on his own. He quadrupled fracking on his own. He did the drone strikes on his own. He did the deportations on his own. I mean, these were not things that he did that were obstructive. These were things that he proposed and they aided and abetted him in doing. So, and then, of course, in the midterms, we lost, and we've never had fewer, states and governorships. And this is something that the right wing is really good at. I mean, between the Koch brothers and ALEC taking over these legislatures and putting in these policies that are used, like I just saw the film 13th by Ava DuVernay, and it was a great film. If people haven't seen it, it's streaming on Netflix, and it's basically about the mass incarceration and the roots going all the way back to, the civil rights and the Nixon Southern strategy and Reagan's war on drugs, and now the private prison corporations. And someone just told me the other day that Corrections Corporation of America is now building all these new detention centers. They're calling them detention centers, but they really are prisons, and they're building them down along the border. And they anticipate, with Trump taking over, that they're going to get a lot more clients now because they're going to be putting people into these horrific conditions. I was talking to a lawyer friend of mine who is a volunteer. He goes down to Texas and does pro bono work for these people. So this is what we have in this country right now. And Obama, and whoever, I guess it's Debbie Wasserman Schultz, did nothing about it. They did nothing about it. So, I mean, one thing from what I've heard about Keith Ellison and what he plans to do with the Democratic Party, it sounds like it's even better than, Howard Dean's 50-state strategy. If he can do that and he can get the message out, well, first of all, if the Democratic Party is willing to see, the results of the election and make some severe changes about who it's going to be representing, the people or the special interests.
Well, that's really the question, Lauren. Is Bernie right in believing that he's going to be able to, with the support of Ellison, with the support of Chuck Schumer, are we going to be able to get him go in that direction, or is he just,
Well, I really don't know.
Is Ellison the right choice? Is Ellison the right choice? I mean, they had their 3-day donor meeting. They didn't go to Act Blue and say, okay, this is how we're going to raise all of our money with individual donations, not just from poor people and veterans that are on the street and kids, but we're going to get our big our regular, middle class people to donate this way. And this is how we're going to build the Democratic Party. Why shouldn't Nina Turner be the head of the DNC?
We were all asking for that, and as a matter of,
why are they all going in the same direction?
Right. We were asking for that when she was speaking. The moderator basically said he was going to withhold his endorsement pending whether, Nina Turner was given a shot. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the Democratic Party is going to do. It's like not anything that I'm really concerned about because I've given up on the Democratic Party. I'm probably going to do a Dem exit and register no party preference and go back to fighting on the issues. I mean, I think we've seen some successes on the issues. In California, we were outspent in Monterey County. They were outspent 30-1 for the fracking ban by Big Oil, and the fracking ban won. And that's what I also said when I spoke yesterday. I said the only thing to counter money power is people power. And if we turn out and we get off the computers and stop with the clicktivism, with the sharing of articles, the signing of petitions, the irate comments that we make, that we spend so long composing these erudite comments when we're just preaching to the choir, if we actually get out and we help, for weeks, I was promoting going door to door up in Monterey County, canvassing for this fracking ban. And that's what I wanted, because that's what you need to do. You need to see people. Like Betty Yee was saying, she goes to these communities that nobody ever visits. I mean, if Keith Ellison starts going to these communities that nobody ever visits and that we're going to be working for you, and they get some sort of faith and trust, this is what Trump did. I mean, I've been reading articles about the revenge of the white working class and how a lot of the people who voted for Trump voted for Obama in 2012 and 2008. And they were giving him a chance, but they saw that he did nothing for them. And these people are saying, we'll give Trump 4 years, and if he does nothing for us, we'll desert him too. So I don't really think that they're a bunch of, racist, homophobic, sexist, whatever. I think they're just people that are tired of government not working for them. This person seemed to understand their plight. He seemed to think that he was going to do something about it. I think they voted for him despite. Yeah, I see you shaking your head. But I mean, you got to talk to people. You got to see the interviews that Ben Jones did. You got to see the interviews that Jordan Chariton and Eric Beiler did when they went on a 5-day tour through the heartland talking to Trump supporters. Nobody's happy with that kind of talk. But, they wanted to, as Cenk Uygur says, they wanted to throw a brick. They're brick throwers. They wanted to throw a brick at the whole system. And if we keep, shaking our heads like they're doing now and making it like it's all about identity politics, that's how we lost.
It is identity politics. You cannot remove the fact that they voted for a racist, demagogue, misogynist. And the fact of the matter is, I'm going to hold each and every single one of those people that voted for Trump accountable for what's happening now. I'm going to hold them accountable for the rise in hate crimes. I'm going to hold them accountable for the fact that here in liberal Washington, people have tried to run my friend over. I'm going to hold them accountable for the fact that I'm consistently being called a nigger as I walk down the street by people with those Trump Pence bumper stickers. I don't care. And as I told my friend, a childhood friend who voted for Donald Trump, who said, well, I voted for him because economic issues are bad. I don't care. You voted for a racist. You voted for a demagogue. You voted for a misogynist. And because you voted for him, you rubber stamped those that rhetoric. You rubber stamped racism. You rubber stamped misogyny, and you rubber stamped demagoguery. You cannot separate the two. They come intertwined. And because I voted for this, it doesn't matter. You vote for the package. And along with that package comes the label of being a racist, comes the labeling a misogynist, and comes the label of being a demagogue because you said, you know what, that's not a deal breaker.
All right. Well, you know what? Then you need to hear Nina Turner's speech because she's addressing and she's saying that if we keep doing that, we keep blaming, we keep calling them deplorable.
I'm not calling them deplorable, but I am going to call a duck a duck.
Well, listen, you're saying that these people endorse that, whether they believe that or not. And, that may be how, the fact of the matter is, but the point is, she offered no alternative. This was the thing.
Yes.
She ran on Obama's third term, which didn't appeal to anyone because Obama did nothing for them. She ran on fear of Trump, which didn't work because they didn't care. And she didn't offer any kind of positive program. I read an interview in the Daily Mail, an article in the Daily Mail, which was all about Bill Clinton and how he was saying, he knew from his race back in 92, and I was working on Jerry Brown's campaign. Believe it or not, he was once a progressive, but he ran for president against Bill Clinton. And James Carville famously said, it's the economy, stupid. And Bill Clinton was trying to have some influence on his wife's campaign, and they wouldn't listen to him because they had, Cheryl Mills and Neera Tandem and John Podesta and Robbie Mook and all these people that were listening to data and the algorithms. And they had some stupid computer by the name of Ada. And they ran the entire campaign listening to computers and polls as opposed to going out in the country and talking to people. Nina Turner was saying she was having these fucking concerts with Jay-Z and Beyonce, and having, $33,400 a plate fundraisers everywhere she went instead of talking to real people. So
And
this
that's-
was a campaign,
That's
you know
all
what?
well and true. But
You
that
got to
doesn't.
blame the Democratic Party here. You can't blame the people.
I'm not blaming. No. Here's where you're misconstruing what I'm saying. I blame Hillary Clinton for losing the election. Hillary Clinton lost the election, and the only person to blame is Hillary Clinton. The only people that, if you voted for Trump, you don't get to cry and say, well, I'm not actually a racist. Too bad you voted for it. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying abandon these people, no. But what I am saying is you don't get to hide behind the excuse of, well, I voted for economic reasons. Who voted for Trump? What is the only demographic group Trump won in this entire election? White folks. He didn't win with black people. He didn't win with Latinx people. He didn't win with Asians. He didn't win with Native Americans. He didn't win with mixed folks. He won white men and white women, and that's it. And the crux of his campaign was racism. The crux of his campaign was xenophobia. The crux of his campaign was misogyny. And white people overwhelmingly said, we're fine with that, because as long as you take care of us, everyone else be damned. And you don't get to leave that behind.
29% of Latinos voted for Trump, and they knew full well.
And that means 71% of Latinx people did not. That is what we call a landslide victory for the Dems. 71%. That's like me saying Hillary Clinton got 23% of the vote in Washington State. Guess what? She still lost by a gigantic margin. The only groups Trump won were white people, period.
Right. Here's the thing. I think you have it's twofold here. Trump as a genius marketer, and for whatever he is, he was able to take those two messages, the pain that everyone is feeling, on the white working class, whatever, everybody, all working class, which was Bernie was trying to tap into, after being the hero of the white working class. I think he effectively transformed his message into a broader message. Well, Trump's message didn't broaden out. It took that pain and then wrapped it in that hatred and that misogyny. And then there is a certain degree of people that I think found a permission to express that because it was out there. And and they're using the excuse of economics. Yes, he has that message. And they use that excuse to vote for the racist part of his agenda. So I agree with both of you. I think the Democratic Party completely ignored these people and have for the last 40 years, just like the Republican Party. At least they do it outwardly. And then you have everybody's in pain. You got 50% of the population that are poor. And, you've seen the charts we looked at earlier. The GDP percentage to working people hasn't changed at all. Minimum wage people are making less than the top 150,000 people on Wall Street. And then you have this confluence. This is where demagoguery comes in. But you're right. The division is not going to get us anywhere. We have to find a way through it and to work with people of good heart and good nature to come together on the issues locally, because that's the only way it's going to change. I don't see anything changing on a national level. I really don't. No. I don't. In any level. In the Congress or in presidential politics. I think it's useless. Absolutely useless. And that's kind of the way I voted in this election. I didn't vote for any national, except for I voted for Jill Stein in California. But,
right.
I didn't vote for senator. I didn't vote for House because I'm not voting for him anymore. I'm not going to give permission for war and more destruction of the working people in this country. So we'll see what happens. Go ahead.
Well, I want to just say, because I know we're going to have to end in a couple minutes, but I wanted to say that also yesterday on the dais was Alexandra Roja, who is with Brand New Congress. And she outlined what that group is trying to do. Zach Exley, who was Bernie's digital organizer, left with some super volunteers to start Brand New Congress. Their idea is to turn over the Congress in 2018. And they are looking for non-politicians. They are looking for ordinary people, doctors, lawyers, plumbers, people who are well respected in their community to run for Congress. I said, do you want to take over all the seats? I mean, what about the Congress people that we have that are good? And they said, well, we'll look and we'll start off with the worst ones that are obviously horrible and need to be replaced. And what they need to do is they need to draft people, because my other question to her was, why was somebody who's a teacher or a doctor or lawyer, why are they going to leave their profession or their job that they've been working in all these years to run for Congress? And he said, well, that's why we have to draft them. So they're looking to get like 100,000 people on board to be part of their program to recruit and draft these replacements. And they're looking for the parties. And when we said three parties, they said the Democrat, the Republican, and whichever independent party in that community. Like if there's a Green Party candidate, shows that they have the political backing that they can mount a successful campaign, then we will back that person. So it's a very interesting thing. They're calling it like a multi-partisan approach to basically replace the Congress with progressives in 2018. So I think that's an interesting thing that we should be on the lookout for going forward.
And Lauren, just let us know what's coming up for you in the next week. Where are you? What's going on? Were there any events you want to talk about? Any issues that we're getting in the streets for?
Well, I personally am going on vacation between now and the end of the year. So
I think Adair is in the same. I think Adair is in the same camp.
Yeah.
I just want to let Adair know about something in Washington. If he doesn't already know it, I posted this on Facebook the other day. There's some state senator there that is putting forth a bill to basically criminalize protest. To
Yeah,
call
we were talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I alerted my activist friends who I worked with on the TPP. I don't know if you know Pam Keeley and
Yes.
Jeff and Evan Duke. You know, all these guys. You know, you got to get on this. Stop this bill from going forward, because if something like this happens, you know, also net neutrality, we have to be on the lookout. For
Oh,
the fact that,
they
you
are
know,
coming after that, baby. They are going to come with us with a vengeance.
so these are the tools that we have to protect. We have to protect protest, and we have to protect a free and open internet. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be looking at in the coming year.
Awesome. Lauren Steiner, Our Revolution LA. Adair, what's happening this week for you other than a little rest from your your studies?
Well, there's no real rest for the wicked there. I've still got a few workshops in chemistry to finish up. But I will actually be trying to make a trip. Well, I live in the state capitol, so I'll probably go into the state capitol building actually to talk about exactly what you just said, Lauren, because protest is already being treated as illegal here in Washington State. I don't know if you'd heard about this yet, but we did mention earlier there was an activist camp stopping some of the trains that transport fracking waste and tar sands and things like that and stuff from actually over at the NODAPL sites. They had been camped out in the area on the port commissioner's land on port land, and riot gear police actually came in and forcibly evicted the camp, removed all of them physically, removed their belongings, so that way the trains could head out without port commission, without Dr. E.J. Zeta, the port commissioner's authority. She did not authorize it. She's now trying to figure out who did, and then said there needs to be a clear chain of command. So protest is already being treated as illegal here. So I'm planning to make that trip over to the Capitol building to try to drum up some action, some support against this, because that bill's actually got an incredible amount of support back over east. But I do want to ask this in particular to white viewers, in particular to those of you who have family members or friends who voted for Trump. Those people aren't going to listen to me. Those people do not care what I have to say. I am a West Coast liberal elite, as far as many of them are concerned. I am a university student getting 2 degrees in physics and chemistry. They will listen to you. If you feel you're an ally, if you feel that Trump is absolutely terrible, but the economic state of people in this country is also unacceptable, you have to talk to your family. You have to talk to your friends. You have to be a voice in your community, and you have to lead change. But that also goes for all of us. In each and every one of our individual communities, we have to start stepping up. We need to start being leaders, and we need to start coming together.
Yeah, and let me mention this, it goes both ways, because I went to a quote unquote unity meeting that the head of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, it was a showing of 13th that I mentioned before, and she was moderating the discussion. And when she made her comment that what this election shows is that all white people are racist, I felt compelled to speak out and say, well, actually, there's an interpretation that, you know, this was an anti-establishment populist election. And she immediately jumped all over me before I could even finish my comment, called me, you know, saying that I was speaking from my white privilege. And then someone else called me a white supremacist. And I have to say that, you know, I'm not saying this is reverse racism, but there have been a lot of, you know, posts that white people have been, you know, subjected to, basically saying, oh, you know, you have your white privilege, you have your white fragility, you know, and when you're called out on it, then up comes white fragility. And I think we have to stop treating allies like this just for expressing an opinion. So, you know, just like where we have to call out racism, if we see somebody belittling, you know, saying something sexist or saying something racist, I think we have to step in no matter what our color or sex is. But I think also when people talk about that, it's like I posted and it's like black and white who responded. I said, I'm sick and tired of apologizing and cowering from my white privilege. And then all my people of color friends basically started sharing articles with me on how to be a white ally and this and that. And the other people, my white friends, were saying, I agree with you. So there's a split right here in the progressive community about this. And we've got to work this out, folks, because if we're fighting each other, we don't have enough fight for the real enemies.
Well, just to touch on this, division is where they win. There's cash in chaos. The bankers won chaos. People, paying protesters won chaos. I mean, whatever, they thrive on this. This is what they want. This is how they win. This is how they win, by fomenting division. Had similar experiences in supporting BLM protests here. Yes, the majority of white people did put Donald Trump in. That's how he won. But there was also, 49% of us that didn't vote for Donald Trump. Remember, there are, between the Democrats and the independents, he lost this election by a lot of votes. A lot of people in this country do not believe in what Donald Trump believes in. Now, do we need to take our licks as white people? I think we do. I think we need to I think we need to step back and let the pain come out. I believe that. When we were at, just to anecdotally, at this protest here in Pasadena, the media was there. No one wanted to talk to the media, but Cello would talk to them. So she was trying to, express her support and was immediately, oh, you go to the white person to talk. Why don't you talk to anybody else? I mean, this happened. But nobody would talk. And again, when the reporters said nobody else would talk. And so I hear you. I feel you, Lauren, and I feel you too, Adair. But I think you're right. The division, we have to find ways to bridge this. We have to find the people of good nature and good heart to, fight against everything Trump's going to do that's going to hurt people. And if we can sway him and sway his supporters, it's up to them now. It is really up to them, Adair. They have to, we talked about this earlier. There's people at Cello's work that Trump supporters that are actually having an engaging conversation with her more civilly than she's been having with Hillary's supporters. Because they're like, listen, I don't feel this way. Well, she's like, well, you better pony up and make sure we know that, because it's on you. You got it. You've got him, you've got the House, and you've got all the hate that comes with it. So you better start stepping up.
All right, I gotta go
too. Thank you, Adair. Thank you, Lauren. This has been the Robust Opposition in DC. Dave Conan. You can follow me on Twitter at Our Revolution TV, not affiliated with Bernie Sanders or Our Revolution organization. Lauren Steiner, you're at LA for Bernie still on Twitter.
Yeah.
And at Adair Schmidt, that's your Twitter. You can see Adair on Project Sanity regularly once we get the show back up regularly. We're trying.
Add a PS to the end of my name on Twitter and you'll find the right account. My other one is locked.
There you go. Very good. So subscribe to the channel, like if you like, spread the word. We're going to try to do this every Sunday. This has been the Robust Opposition on OurRevolution.tv. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys. Keep up the fight. Peace.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Let's give thanks for something. We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, okay.
Peace out.